This is the part 2 of the video tutorial for the denim shirt with touch of African print fabric. Right here I have drafted my sleeve head already, and I added an extra ½ inch allowance. Yeah, so once I'm done with that, I'm going to cut it out. If you don't know how to draft a sleeve pattern, I already have a video tutorial up. This sleeve is for about a 3/4 sleeve, and then once I cut the first sleeve out, I'm going to use that as a pattern to cut the second sleeve. So this is basically how I do when I'm doing cutting pieces in duplicates. And then I'm going to fold the edge by about ½ inch, and that is the extra ½ inch allowance that I added to my sleeve. And I'm going to hem both sides. So once I'm done with both sides, I measure my sleeve head again. So right here I'm having about 9 inches, and then I measure my armhole of my shirt from the previous video, and I have about 8 inches, so meaning I'm going to be joining my sleeve by 1 inch. So I start with a back stitch and then sew all the way down in a slanted position, and then when I'm about 1½ inch away from the edge, I just close my stitch. So it's giving me an open side of about 1½ inches. I turn my sleeve inside out, and that's it, guys. So right now I'm going to insert my sleeve in the armhole for attachment. So what I'm going to do is notch the center of my sleeve head and place it directly under my shoulder joining, and I'm going to be stitching from that center, from that point, all the way to this all the way to the seam at the underarm area of the shirt. And then I stop there, go back to the shoulder joining at the opposite side and do the same thing. So I'm all done with my sleeve joining. I'm going to measure the end of my sleeve, and I have about 6.25 inches. So right here what I'm going to be doing is cutting out a cuff to attach to that sleeve. I'm going to be cutting the cuff to about 6.25 inches as well. So I have 6.25 by 3 inches. So I cut another one, and then I'm going to be using it as a pattern to cut the African print fabric out, and I'll be using that to line it after adding an extra ½ inch. I join and cut it out. So right here I'll be joining the African print to the denim fabric by about ½ inch, and I'm going to stretch it out so that the African print shows on the right side. And then I'll be stitching the sides as well. I prefer to sew on the African print because it's not stretchy, and the denim fabric is stretchy. So if I sew on the denim, it's going to stretch out and it's going to be longer than the African print. So for uniformity's sake, sew on the non-stretchy fabric. Once I'm done, I poke the edges with my scissors, and I do a top stitch close to the African print fabric. and that's my cuff. So I'm going to be folding it by about 1/2 inch allowance and give it I have to press that so the fold stays in place. And then once I'm done with that, I place my sleeve in the cuff 1/2 inch in as well, with the wrong side facing the wrong side of the cuff, which is my lining, and I continue to sew. So when I get 4 inch away from the edge, I start pleating, and I do about 3 pleats and then sew all the way to the end. And I do the same thing for the other side as well. So that's it, guys. The next thing is to cut out my collar, and I'm going to be starting with my collar stand. But before I cut my collar, I have to measure the length of my neck from the button lap all the way down to the other button lap or placket. So I have about that's 9.25 inches on fold. I add an extra 1/2 inch on the side. Length is 2 inches because I want a collar stand of 1 inch with 1/2 inch joining on both sides. So once I cut it out, I'm going to measure 1 inch away from the end and curve it out. So my collar stand has a very nice curve, and I cut that out. And then I'm going to be cutting that on African print fabric as well. Then the main collar. Now using my collar stand, I mark 1 inch out. Yeah, that's it there. And then my collar stand is about 2.5 inches. Two and a half inches in length. And then I'm going to be reducing this side on fold by 1/2 inch, extending the other side by 1/2 inch as well, and then I'm going to curve it down and curve the other side as well. And then it's time to cut it out. So that's it. That's how I want it to look. Then I cut it on African print as well to line my collar stand. Sorry, to line the main collar. I sew all the way down by 1/2 inch, sew the sides as well. And then I turn it inside out and then use my scissors to poke the edges, the pointy part out. So once I'm done with that, I give it a gentle press as usual, and then I do a top stitch. I actually do a top stitch on the denim because I've already folded sewn both sides, and this is how it looks. So now I'll be attaching main collar to collar stand, and I'll be placing the open end of my main collar where the curved part of the collar stand is. I place it inside, cover it with the denim, and I'll be stitching by 1/2 inch. I was supposed to sew on the African print, not the denim side, so I had to turn that. And then when I get to the curved area, I have to keep pivoting the fabric. Yeah. So I'm all done attaching collar stand to collar, main collar, and I do a top stitch as well so it folds down easily. That's how it looks, guys. So the next thing I do now is to fold my collar stand in by 1/2 inch as well, and I've pressed it already. So I'm going to be inserting the neck of my shirt into that with the wrong side of my collar to the right side of my shirt, and I'm going to be stitching by 1/2 inch allowance, because my shirt, the neck part of my shirt is in that collar stand by 1/2 inch. So I'm going to stitch all the way down like that. So this is how my collar looks, very clean and nice. So next thing I do is the pockets. So I want my pocket to be a 4 by 4 inch pocket, and that is the top part that I'm marking. I add 1/2 inch allowance for folding at the sides. This is the other 4 inch on the other side, and I join with my ruler. Extra 1/2 inch for joining, like I said earlier. So now to the bottom, I add 1 inch to the bottom, and I divide that 1 inch into 2, so 1/2 inch extra, so 1/2 inch rather. And I divide my the width of my pocket into 2, and I'm going to be having something like this. That's the reason for all the extra 1/2 inch allowance. So this part that looks like a roof is the bottom of my pocket. I add an extra 1/2 inch to the top as well for joining, and then I cut it out. So I'm going to be duplicating this on the African print fabrics. That's what I'm going to use to line my pocket, and I add an extra 1/2 inch to the African print, basically doing exactly what I did to the cuff for my sleeve. And then I stitch the top, and once I'm done with that, I stretch the fabric such that the bottom meets each other, and then I stitch round. I make sure I pivot the fabric wherever I get to an edge or a point for easy sewing. And then on the other side, I leave an allowance of about 1.5 inches, so I'll be able to turn the pocket inside out. So once I turn it inside out, I'm going to press it so all seams lay flat, and then, or before I press it, I have to poke the edges so that it comes out really nice. So once I'm done pressing, I place the pointy side along my dart line, and I place my pocket actually just 1 inch above my darts, and I begin to stitch all the way. I actually made 2 pockets for this, so this is just the first one. I had this done for me. My machine cannot do buttonholes, so I'm going to be placing my buttons, and these are the buttons I'm going to be using. So where those markings are, I place my buttons using a hand needle, a threaded hand needle. So I usually like to double my stitching across, and then knot it about 2 or 3 times in order to secure it properly. And I'm going to do that for the rest of those buttons. So this is it, guys. This is how it looks. This is how my pocket looks. This is everything, guys. and this is my faux yoke design at the back, and that's my collar right there. So don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe for more sewing tutorials and DIYs. Thank you for watching.